Something happens to you when you leave this town. The farther away, the hazier it all gets. But me, I never left. I remember all of it.
To the losers?
We made an oath.
Swear? If it isn't dead, if it ever comes back, we'll come back to it.
We didn't stop it.
Pennywise.
The clown.
It's back to school time on the film board from the next reel on rashpixel.fm. We spoil movies, and this month the gang has gathered to teach me all about why people like horror movies. Seriously, what is enjoyable about this scary stuff? 2 years ago, Stephen King's It hit theaters and promptly set a record for the highest grossing horror film of all time. More than 700 million buckos in worldwide revenue. And now, this week, we have the sequel in It Chapter 2. And because of all that hullabaloo, these guys made me see both of them. And yes, I was scared. I jumped. I stopped the movie. I ran away. I laughed when I had no other emotions to do it. It was just, terrible. Anyway, let me begin by introducing you to my tormentors, teachers. Say hello and tell me how much you like the scary stuff. See, Sarmento, what do you think?
I like some of the scary stuff. I like scary stuff that is embracing the genre of using the genre to say things, not just to be creepy. So that's my preference for what I would consider the scary stuff.
Okay, good to know. Pete, how do you feel about horror? Right, say hello.
I'm learning. I'm hi also everyone. Very glad to be here. I am also I'm exploring my inner horror freak. I feel like I'm learning. I'm trying to see more scary stuff, and I'm with Steve. If there is some sort of resonance, if there's something that is trying to make me look at it in a new and interesting way, then I'm all in. As soon as we'll talk about what happens on the other side of that. Okay,
I think that's good. And now I've saved kind of the last one here. Tommy Handsome, say hi and talk to us about horror.
Hi, not a fan. No, I'm an enormous fan. It's my favorite genre. And back in the day, I would pretty much see everything, every horror movie, because there would always be something in there where it's like, oh, you just elevated this idea. Whether it was just this version of a scare or a jump scare or a pinball, or it's really about this. That is no longer an option, because with Netflix, and it's apparently so easy to make a movie, everyone has made a horror movie, and there's so many out there that it's not possible. But no, I mean, horror movies are my favorite thing. I think they send me through the most, and they're what I get the most out of.
Well, my apologies mostly to you, Tommy, because I tend to avoid the horror movies because I generally don't like being scared. To me, it's a negative emotion built on negative stimuli that I try to avoid. I mean, pain is meant to help you avoid things that are painful, right? Fear is like that for me. I'm trying to avoid things.
Jury's out on that.
Scared about. But in this one, since there's relevance to the film industry and potentially to horror as a genre, I have pulled it together and I bounced up and down a little bit, shaking my hands back and forth, trying to open my mind, trying to get where you are, Pete, when you talk about discovering your inner horror freak. I'm not comfortable with that, but I'm going to use it because it's the solidarity. Here we go. Okay. Exactly. We're trying. So I've already seen both movies now. I watched it I downloaded it and I stopped it only 28 times, but I got through it. And so I think I've already done the heavy lifting. So I just don't know. So as, sort of a voice here and a host, I don't know how objective I'll be able to be, because in my mind, fear equals bad. I promise I will try. So
We're very proud of you, JJ.
Thank you. I feel I deserve it.
No, I was legit proud of you that you were okay to go see this in a theater.
Yeah.
Because you're not allowed to like walk around and shake your. Well, I guess you can. Maybe go to like a mop.
I just can imagine him screaming.
I jumped up a bunch, and I'm going to post. I took a picture on to post on Instagram, and I'm going to do it. I haven't done it. I should have done it the day that we saw it. I saw it yesterday. But I took it from, like the little hallway that leads up to the theater.
Yeah.
I took a picture of where the aisle-ish thing where I watched some of the movie from. But
what is that? What do we call it? Is that like the foyer?
It's not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's fine.
So I jumped up and around, and I actually, now you get to pick your seats now, right? That's something that's
right.
So I literally picked the closest seat to the door. So
to
E1,
the door.
Thank you for E1. I was right there on the corner so that I wouldn't disturb anyone as I'm like, okay, I'm leaving now. There was some of that. So anyway, but my point about bringing up all this stuff is I don't know how objective I'll be able to be, because the stuff that people love about horror in general, I don't really love about movies. So I need you guys to kind of tell me if this was a good one. So why don't we start there with your initial thoughts? Tommy, let's go right from there. Tommy, was this a good one for you?
It's my time to shine.
Yay.
The movie is a bit of a mess. It's a very, very hit or miss with scares. It's really not all that scary. But I loved the funhouse feeling that I got. It's incredibly ambitious. Weirdly, surprisingly, I was like, what? At the end, I believe that the incredibly long running time was deserved. I felt it really touched on a lot of things. I love the fun house, anything can happen kind of thing. A lot of the acting was great. Bill Hader is a national treasure. I ended up really enjoying the film, and I actively want to see it again.
That's cool. Will you stack them 1 over 2?
I think I like 2 over 1.
Okay,
is that what you were asking? Yeah, I think I like 2 more.
That's a big thing.
Yeah,
okay.
And you can see Pete agrees with me. His little red glasses of judgment. See you up there. Yeah.
I'm not watching the live stream. I should be doing that at the same time.
They turn more red when he disagrees. If everyone watches,
their mood glasses. Okay. Well, let's hear it, Pete. What did you think of this one?
Well, I really ended up enjoying the first It Chapter 1, and I thought the kids were fantastic, just sort of vessels of kind of their journey into darkness, and the sort of darkness as a cleansing kind of thing. And I found myself intrigued by where we're going to go here, and how are they going to tie all these things together? I hadn't read the book. I should say that clearly. I haven't read the book. I'm about halfway through the book, and I'm fascinated by how they ended up building these 2 movies structurally. I feel like the running time is not deserved, and it's just too long. And I was listening to this interview with was Andy Muschietti, who says, I have a 4-hour version of this movie, just It Chapter 2. And I think for the Blu-ray, not only am I going to put all the stuff that ended up getting cut back, I think there's more stuff I'd like to shoot.
Oh, my goodness.
And the interviewer says, wait, I'm sorry, what? You're going to shoot new scenes? Yeah, I think we can. And with the performance that this movie is doing, these 2 movies have done, I think he has certainly the cred to do it and make an even bigger movie. I don't know that I'm into that. I'll buy it, sure, because I collect things. But it was long. It was a mess. And by the time it hit the end, the kind of big climax, it was every bit fake things throwing fake things at fake things. And I will be deeply surprised if Tommy finds that last sequence rewarding at all.
I'm glad you bring that up, and we will definitely get to that. But my question for you, to go to the running time question, is which final sequence are you talking about? Holy smokes.
It does have some Lord of the Rings. What?
Epilogues. I tried to leave 3 times, and I was like, wait, but the credits haven't started yet. Okay, anyway.
I was like, what if the TV series just started? That miniseries, and you're like, wait, what? This is a part of it?
Yeah, exactly. It's canon.
Kiss me, fat boy. Oh, I can't get enough of Tim Curry.
So that we clearly have a lot to talk about. That's really great. But I want to hear initial thoughts too from Steve. What did you think?
I have to say, first, I'm a little bit distracted because I'm watching over Tommy's corner, just waiting for Pennywise to show up through his little vertical blinds back there.
You can't turn this into a horror film for me now, too.
Because if this were a movie, that's exactly what would happen. Here's a movie about guys doing a podcast, and we watch the killer come right through the slats there. Foster sits there, watches the killer come past, kill Tommy, and say, yeah, okay, I'm all right with
Tommy,
that.
stop bouncing. He's behind you. You guys. And I just keep doing this the whole time. Yeah, I do dress up Foster like a clown. It's cool.
But
Sure.
I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum from Pete on this one. I by the time the credits rolled, I thought, I can't believe it went that fast. I really enjoyed it. I've read the book, and I'm curious to hear sort of the plotting on that, because I knew what was going to happen having read the book. So as far as pacing, I was along for the ride. I know what's coming. There were some changes that were made. It's an adaptation. You can't have everything in there. And I saw that they went back. We have a lot of stuff with the kids. I think there were some scenes I was expecting in the first one. We'll get into those things, like the Paul Bunyan piece. So it was nice to see those things back. But to me, this was a great story about adults coping with childhood trauma and how you have to face those things head on. If you bury them, it really inhibits you as a person. And so to me, it's again, what the genre does well is taking those things, the horror, all of that, and put it in the context of, here's a story that's communicating some ideas that people can benefit from if they sort of follow the threads and the clues that are presented there. And to me, this one worked really, really well. I really enjoyed it.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up, and I want to talk to you about that too, because where the line starts to blur for me when I start to get into horror films that I can kind of deal with is where we start to make those sort of artful or metaphoric through lines about what the story is about. So that is something that I didn't necessarily find with this, but I think that people that do will really like it. So first, in general, for me, I didn't super like it because of what it was trying to do to me around every corner. And of course, we already kind of got into the fact of how it was way, way long. So, but I can stomach some scary when the story is good. So I first want to give a quick and very spoilerish way that I understand the story. And then I want to dig into the kind of stuff you're talking about there, Steve, with I love the idea of dealing with childhood trauma and how it maybe manifests later in life. But I get concerned with a story like this because there might be something else there. So this is the sequel, right? So what happens here is the creepy thing that appears like a clown and steals/kills everyone comes back on his 27-year-old cycle. And it begins again to do his thing, prompting the only person from the first movie that's left in Scary Dairy to call in the blood pact that all the kids had made in the first one. Most of them reluctantly return and realize they've forgotten most all of everything from their childhood. So maybe that's kind of the trauma thing that could be interesting. But it also comes rushing back to them. Again, it is back, and it's trying to scare the pants off them and also gain revenge on the battles from the first one. We start to learn some of the origins of it, and we try to banish it yet again, but ultimately learn that standing up to our fears is the best way to crush them, regardless of whether they're spun up inside of ourselves or amplified by some alien eater of worlds. Is that right? Am I getting
very
that
good.
Wrong?
Very good.
Okay.
That's good.
So I want to jump to the point of, the sort of the book of the vampire idea, the mythology of what was in here. I really like where you were going with what you were saying in your initial thought, Steve, of that it's about this childhood trauma and all this stuff. For me, I tend to really like when they dig deep into the mythology in these kind of movies, because I like to kind of explain something to myself, which I think is probably contrary to what horror people like anyway, because they want to be scared by it. But they didn't do that here. So I ended up not liking that as much. But potentially that would have deflated the story anyway. So I think they do a good job of treating us like grown-ups and saying, you figure out what you want from the story anyway. Is that kind of what you're talking about, Steve? Is your takeaway about that you saw that this was about childhood trauma and something that's greater than this story of this thing that's scaring it?
Yes, and part of that comes from the changes they made from the book, because again, you've got Stephen King and his huge sort of universe of stories. And so you have a scene late in the book where you've got a giant turtle that has
who throws up the earth.
Universe, and so you've got these forces, and it ties back to Dark Tower and all of those things, and they cut out that sort of mystical aspect of it. And I think the best way to then approach it is make this about the characters. And so the whole quest for them to each find their tokens, and that piece made it much more personal to each of the characters rather than just sort of they're small players in a larger cosmic good versus evil battle. And I think being aware of that decision really heightened for me the focus that the filmmakers were trying to put on each of these characters, what their traumas were, having to go back to these locations and face sort of other isolated confrontations they had with Pennywise that tied into some specific anxieties and fears they had, and come back with those tokens. And they have to destroy those tokens. They have to destroy that fear, that anxiety that's holding them back. So for me, it was very present up front. But again, I may be more aware of that because I had questions about how they were going to handle giant, macroverse stories about, galactic turtles. And when I saw they weren't going in that direction, I was paying attention to those changes a little bit more than perhaps Pete, who hasn't read the book.
Sure.
I'm kind of curious how his sense of the plotting of how all those pieces worked as an overall story, not knowing what was coming.
I was actually surprised by how much of the cosmic stuff was kept in. All of that Legend of Chud.
That was so distracting for me, not knowing what word they were saying. I was like, should I know that
CHUD, and we're pretending that
with
Chud
an umlaut
wasn't already. Yeah.
Chud.
That the what became the Deadlights fell from space and stuff. It is like Steve is saying, it is so much about trauma. It is so much a horror version of going through and figuring out how to move forward. I was surprised how much they actually kept in. Because that was always, for me in the book, the least interest. I love the idea. I love the idea of a town so evil that there isn't like an evil born within it.
See, now, and that's where in the first one, that's what I thought they were doing too. It was the evil town thing, and then clearly that's something different.
I like the idea also, though, that you look at a town that has sort of been left behind in time, and you're like, what? Why are they such a mess? Oh, there's actually an evil force. I don't also need that to come from space. Either way, I was surprised. I just want to get in the middle of, because I was surprised that they went as far as they did. Okay. It doesn't do anything for me.
Right.
So Pete, did you, so I haven't read the book. Tommy, you've read the book too, right?
Long time ago, but yeah.
So Pete, you and I haven't, or you're doing the book a bit now. Did you gather, let's think of that as three separate ways to view potentially the storyline. We have the dealing with fears that come from trauma, the real sort of humanist thing. We have the cosmic story of this being thing that fell from space. And then we have the concept of this town that's kind of left behind. Which one of those, or were they all part of it for you? Did you gather parts of all of that for your in taking into this movie?
I'm 2/3 there, and I think that's really funny because they had this often repeated through line about how terrible the James McAvoy's endings are, and I thought this is that Stephen King thing where they're walking that line of giving way too much of the nonsense, like mystical space stuff that comes out of the books, and they're trying to balance that with the humanist piece that people can relate to immediately, like live in the now, like they get it. It doesn't need to be too spiritual. They still have the 3 floating lights and all that stuff and the gaping maw and all of that, which I totally tuned out of. Like I was not into that at all. I feel like the dose of like the ceremony of Chud and all that stuff was just the bare minimum that they had to do to be even remotely true to the end of the book, I guess, since I haven't gotten there yet. And they did that. I think those are
Sure.
some hard choices to make, and they made those choices. But for me, I attached much more to the first 2/3 of this movie, and the idea of the way it ties to the first movie. That we got to witness the trauma that these adults are now trying to live through and figure out and face, and that was the stuff that I thought was most interesting in this movie. It was that sociocultural journey.
Well, and I
that
think
they were
that's
making.
interesting.
And
I think if that's the place you go with this movie, which someone like me is not going to be able to do, to be honest. I mean, I'm so scared throughout the entire thing, and I'm so fixated on what's doing the scaring that I can't get into the real sort of thoughtful, creative thing that you guys are talking about. That sounds really interesting to me. I guess for me, the point about the cosmic thing or the other thing, it becomes distracting from the potential thing that you're talking about, which is this sociological thing that's there too, because I'm so damn scared. So my point, and I think that any one of those stories could be interesting if we were to dig into those. That's why I kind of tried to, I guess, segment it out into these three things. But so for my benefit, it's an alien, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, an alien, but like close to potentially almost like an elder god. From like Lovecraftian things. It's not just like he came from a planet and was like, let's go do this. He is Pennywise. It is like a force of evil that is eternal.
Okay, so I got to ask this, because this is please. This is like I was pulling out my hair in this movie, thinking about you guys in particular, because like that's dumb, right? That's just dumb. After all of this real practical evil in the town, like to try to put a name to it, and like it was a turtle is the ultimate like wise other elder god that is that's just dumb stuff.
I love Lovecraftian stuff, but
that doesn't match. I need Tommy to say that. I need Tommy to tell me that's okay.
I love Lovecraftian things. I love the idea of these elder gods that were there before us and everything. I never needed it from the book, and I never needed it in this movie. This kind of explanation coming from space really minimizes. I wanted it to just sort of be. I wanted a town. I wanted a town that was so weirdly corrupt that it almost like calcified into this living being. So no, I mean, I'm not a fan of that in this situation, Pete. No, I'm not.
Because that's exactly the problem that I had with it too. Was that when they got away from when this story is at its best, it's when we are trying to figure out why humanity is struggling against itself. Where do these evil forces come from that we do such things to each other? And as soon as they try to put a kind of spiritual bent on it, a cosmic bent on it, I lost the thread. And I generally, like, you put me in science fiction fantasy realm and I'm already there. But this movie was so grounded in the sewer of evil, right, that I felt like it was kind of a betrayal of the story to do that. And now I know I'm making a critique of a book that I haven't finished yet, but I'm already going down that road of thinking this is about to get really dumb. And I don't know what to do about that, because I feel like, the endings suck. Well, you're right. That joke, it turns out there's a reason why those things are funny.
For the record, though, it still ended up working for me enough, because it was still about confronting fear. They didn't have to go get a sword from planet Xenu and like pour Zilf on it or something like that. Like, it ended up being very human.
You're right. I mean, you use the word Xenu and Zilf in a sarcastic spirit, but they did do the ceremony of Chud, Tom.
I know, but the ceremony was very human based and was very metaphorical, like Steve has been saying, of it's almost Dabda.
You can't hide behind Steve.
It's the series of coping with death. Like Dabda, they go through literally each of those points as they go through. So it still works for me enough. I don't need the cosmic stuff, but I'm able to overlook it.
From what I understand from Stephen King is that he is a believer in both. And that's why he writes these stories like this. There are other stories that he tells like this too, where we have both of these beliefs that humanity is suffering against itself, and that he also believes that there's this Lovecraftian old god that may be the cause of it. And he's this creative thing on both sides that can tell us both those stories. Now, for me, in this particular story, if Pennywise or the Deathlights or whatever it is in his own words an eater of worlds, right? And why did he just stay in Derry? And why does he only show up every 27 years?
He believes he's an eater. Well, I don't know.
I
mean, I can see he is a fake person.
Right.
He is a straw person that just lives on fear.
Right.
And so kind of like certain politicians that we know, like he just lives on, I'm the most important thing that you have to think about. And without your scare or adoration or fear or something, that's sort of the point of the movie is he is just a straw man.
Which is
like it
is your belief in me that makes me big. And it is also then your, your betrayal of me that makes me
disbelief
small.
Or just ability to
disbelief,
really see it as it is.
And that's where we get into the brilliance of the societal message of what's coming here. And if you can isolate to that, I think that's where the story gets really good. And I think we're all kind of saying that. I think that was introduced most by Steve here. And now when you read it, Steve, is that the take on the book, even with all the cosmic stuff? I mean, what I'm asking here is, I want to believe that too, but I'm so distracted by the creepy gaping maw alien. So how do I appreciate this for what it truly can be?
Well, that's your challenge as a viewer, and everybody brings their own filter to this, and so I always bring my literary criticism, chops to movies and try and deconstruct the text that way. So as far as the book, yeah, I mean, Stephen King overwrites everything, and his books are ridiculously huge, and he's got this macroverse that he likes to play around in. So yeah, it's there. Can you set it aside? Sure. The characters are there. There's so much more in the book, the whole history of Derry that gets into the nature of it and its 27-year cycles, and that it's crash landed there. I mean, that's what we see. So it's stranded on this planet, and this is how it survives, is these 27-year cycles. It feasts, and then it goes into hibernation and comes back. So he's playing around with lots of things. Does he need to have internal logic to it? No, he's Stephen King. He can do what he wants. But I think he's created some really compelling characters, and these filmmakers were able to draw all of these pieces out of it. And they did such a great job with, to me, in the initial introduction of each of these characters, we're seeing how their trauma has carried over. We see that Eddie has married his mother. We see that
not literally
Beverly has married her father, and an abusive man. We've got our architect, who's the lonely fat kid who, is presenting his building, and they're saying, let's put up walls. He's like, no, this is about community. Here's the guy whose fear is being alone and isolated, trying to create environments for people to come together. That's what drives his work.
And yet also
doing it alone from his mansion on the hill.
Virtually. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
By
right.
FaceTime.
Because he's still got that anxiety, that fear of being alone. So we see all of these pieces there. We get the setups for the characters, and I think they did a very nice job with pulling this all together. I think there is a certain amount of, when you're adapting something, you've got to maintain some integrity and faithfulness. And so we still have the deadlights shining through the back of Pennywise's skull as he opens his mouth, this weird supernatural sci-fi stuff. I think if it was completely gone, some of the fans would be really, really upset. But I think it works well enough, because to me, any horror movie, you're going to have some unexplained supernatural phenomenon. I think that's just a convention of the genre you accept. I'm not always going to understand this. It's going to get defeated.
It's an exorcism. It's an Indian graveyard. It's whatever.
Exactly.
It is. Yeah.
And so we accept that going in, that they're going to defeat it through some mechanism that's going to be, not believable in the real world, because we're in a fictional reality. These are the rules.
But it's metaphorical.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Finding the totems of your pain, getting rid of them, joining together, asking for help. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's how I should watch horror from now on, is try to separate myself from the scary stuff and really find the metaphor that it's trying to not teach, that it's trying.
That's going to be a struggle for you, because you're such a literalist.
Yeah.
Like that's why this whole genre is hard. But that's why I feel like Hader's character, that his token was a literal token from a video game. I thought was brilliant. Like, I actually thought JJ's gonna get that.
Like,
it's an actual token,
just like you said.
It's a
of
token.
course it
It's
is.
a token.
That's what I was supposed to do. Go get a token.
That's not in the book. His questions about his sexuality.
No, that's totally different.
And I like how not overly explicit it was. No one ever says anything.
Nope.
After, explicitly. I thought that was nicely done.
Well, that and the storytelling in this movie, that's something that I'm trying to make the point about earlier, is that usually I like a lot of the mythology to be sort of like spoon fed to me, especially in a scarier movie. But they did a really good job of showing, not telling in this movie in a way that allowed you to experience it over time. And I think for me, that was really hard because I was trying to assuage myself from all this fear. But I think that it shows a real maturity in the way that they tell this story. Because I think that there would be a lot that they maybe want to trot out there and put out. Did any of you guys see the Tim Curry version?
Yeah.
Yep.
How do they compare? I mean, obviously it matters because even in that version, there were a ton of stars and it was a big deal.
Well, it's been a very long time, but I find it incredibly hard to talk about because I think Bill Skarsgård has so deftly redefined Pennywise for a generation. Like, I think Tim Curry was great. He was the Pennywise, and now I can't even look at him. Like, it's just like,
he was great, but now it feels like an obvious first draft.
Ooh,
of like,
interesting.
It's just an unworkshopped
here's the thing
Pennywise
that you do, and we were all like, oh my gosh, and he was so great. But I think a lot of that is because he's Tim Curry.
Right.
Like, he just brings his voice, his face, brings so much character to things.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, there's so much with what Skarsgård is doing. There's like within one thing, like within one scene, there's weird malevolence and then also doubt.
Yeah.
And pain.
Yeah.
Like he's
shame.
There's so much going on in his stuff. It's hard when he was deflating at the very end, spoiler alert, it was hard for me to watch. I was like, you are the epitome of evil, and yet you're making me feel sorry for you.
It was perfect.
I thought he's just incredible.
That was a beautiful little turn at the end, and it was the end sequence that I found like this. The movie came off the rails for me, and yet that I found that sequence in particular super redemptive for the character, and it was damn near touching, as all of them are gripping the heart together, and sharing in this journey of destroying now anthropomorphized fear,
and he's
together.
Just complete vulnerability and fear. He becomes his own meal, which is a lot.
Super interesting. And I agree with you. I think that what he did with this was super amazing. So we talk about you remember Curry as the embodiment of Pennywise before, and now this is this new thing. What else about this story in particular? I mean, this was the first one was the highest grossing horror film of all time. This is a big deal. What is it about this story, and what is it about this thing that we're going to take through that we're going to remember? I mean, it can't just be fear of clowns, right? Like this wasn't what taught everyone to fear clowns, was it?
I think a lot of the first movie's success comes from it fronts, in my personal opinion, it fronts as a really hardcore horror movie. So it's got like that. Did you see it? But it's not. It's actually, for me, not that actual scary. It's more of a fun house. It's very accessible.
I will say that first one is just jump scare, jump scare, jump scare.
There's not a lot
safe.
to hang on to.
Yeah.
But for me, it's almost like, I think the reason, it's almost like a crossover of Old Town Road of like rap and country. if you're not a huge fan of either,
right,
this will help you through, because it's kind of Stand By Me and pretending to be really scary horror, but it's not really that scary. So it takes you by the hand and everyone can sort of come in. It's Old Town Road for me, the first one.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's super interesting.
I think for me, I think it's actually incredibly deft casting. And I want to make sure we talk about the pairing, because we're getting a little bit long in the tooth here. And I feel like we got to talk about some of the mechanics that were really important to me in the movie. Beyond just the cultural resonance of the story, it's important to me to move on here. First of all, the casting was exceptional to a character, to my eye.
Are you talking about it too?
The way both. I mean, the kids to the adults. That's the thing that really stood out. Every single face, I saw echoes of the youth. And
Yeah.
I found the de-aging of the kids in this one super distracting. I think it was, but I went in looking for
I
it.
didn't even know it was. I thought they
it
shot
kind
the
of-
whole thing with just the kids.
Yeah.
Didn't even
I
get
didn't
it.
know, and I thought it was
No.
across the board. I didn't have a single moment of that weird uncanny valley. I
You
thought
saw
was-
it, Pete?
I thought that they
Where
would have
it-
just felt
Oh
really.
yeah. When they first saw them in the underground, when the lighting was a little bit darker, then I could see every single mouth move that was
Yeah.
off, like
Oh.
everything just super. I was really attuned to
I
it.
was just too scared.
Too scared. But I think just in general, the kids to the adults, I think it was amazing. It was just amazing. I didn't like. Sometimes you get that thing where, especially we have groups of kids to adults in these jumping over the transom of time, where you lose track of which one is paired with which. And I never had
That's
that
true for
problem
me,
at
too.
all. I thought they were all great. Absolutely right. Bill Hader's national treasure. James McAvoy, I thought was great too. He's great in everything. And you did see the vein, the beast
Nice.
vein that I thought was a nice throwback. Nice throwback. They didn't remove that.
There were
because
some times
he's
in some of
such the
his
beast.
stuttering when I was like, "That's almost that kid."
Yeah.
Like it got into a little. We're getting into Dennis, or like I don't remember everyone's name, but
Hedwig. Yeah,
Hedwig.
Hedwig. Yes.
Hedwig.
Yeah.
Hedwig. Yeah. I think all of them were great, but I got to call out Isaiah Mustafa. What a fantastic performance of this guy who shows up as like just kind of like ashamed, but yet so confident that he is doing the right thing. And just this sort of meagerness
is that Mike?
in this character.
Got it. Okay.
That's Mike. And the fact that he is, he's the like the Old Spice man's man
Really?
guy,
I didn't know that.
I mean, I just think was really
Great.
Yeah. I'm on a
Wait,
boat,
literally?
right?
He literally is?
Like,
Yeah.
he was the commercial. Yeah, he was that was his first gig. Was the
I guess I don't recognize him because the boat. And in this, he's
ladies
so,
make your man smell like the man you want to
That's
smell
awesome.
like.
And in
right?
this, he's so vulnerable.
He's so vulnerable, and I thought that was
Wow.
was really great. I was really impressed by him, and love seeing him getting this size of a stage in this film. I think he was terrific.
And
So,
Chastain is. I thought she was
Every
just
movie
perfect.
I see her in, I like her more and more. I mean, I am a huge fan of hers, and every movie we've done about with one of her movies on the show, I've been super impressed with. Molly's Game, we did Miss Sloan on Trailer Rewind.
Oh yeah,
I mean, she is just fantastic. I love her work.
Can we talk briefly about the clever cameos?
Yeah, please.
yes,
Because I heard there was one unexpected one, and I thought that as it was starting, I thought, well, I wonder what this weird cameo is going to be. Is it going to be something at the end as part of the reveal? And no, we get it right up front. I think I was the only person in my theater that laughed out loud, maybe because I'm the only one that recognized Peter Bogdanovich as the director of the film.
Oh, yeah.
And
so great.
like,
your ending sucks.
exactly. And then, of course,
And the way that he, in his scarf, ascends from on high.
Right.
In this ridiculous.
And then he's like, back to one.
Yeah.
back to one.
Back to one, and then goes back up.
Ascends
Yeah.
up to the heavens again. And then, of course, Stephen King is the little owner of the pawn shop or whatever, because he's normally
He was really
I
good.
thought
He
it
was
was
neat.
nice to see Stevie in one of his movies again.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
There was another one that I wanted to point out that I thought was really charming, and that is Brandon Crane. If you saw the first the miniseries, young Ben.
Yep.
Yeah, young Ben Hanscom, whatever it is.
Wiscombe Hanson.
Wiscombe, Ben Hanscom. It was Ben Hanscom, was played by Brandon Crane, age 12. And so cut to this, the very first time we meet elder Ben Hanscom in this movie is in the boardroom, right? And the old guy who's saying, we need more walls, right? That is Brandon Crane playing now in a scene opposite the new Ben Hanscom, which I thought was really charming.
right.
And of course you're going to think he's Ben because he's Ben.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly. I thought that was a lovely little fake out.
And it's not a cameo, but it was neat how you were sold on that we were seeing Ben. There was a Ben kind of, you would assume that's how he grew up in the room. And then real Ben shows up and he's like, hi, I'm made of brilliance and beautifulness. And God gave me a touch up. Yeah.
And the fact that the old Ben Hanscom in the original movie, do you remember who played him? handsome John.
I love it.
He was great. Do you remember who played Richie Tozer?
Richie.
Harry Anderson was very
Oh,
disappointing.
Harry Anderson.
I mean, Harry Anderson's
Yes.
fine and all, but like such a great fertile character. And then they gave to the judge from Night Court. You're like,
Judge from Night Court. Yeah.
And in the beginning scene, he does it one of his dumb magic tricks.
Oh,
All
see?
right.
No.
At some point, we're all going to look back on this and say, "Whoops."
But Annette O'Toole was in the original. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the originals.
Oh, I am.
It was super fun. Back to the cast, the building the team bit, I thought was fantastic. There's a whole sequence of building the team where we're learning about the team, and some of the stuff is a little bit, I feel like, controversial as I'm reading others talking about it. The abuse, the spousal abuse in the initial meeting of Beverly, and in fact the opening assault, which is as brutal an assault that you see on the bridge as we get. And it turns
isn't
out
that that's how the book begins, right? Is the assault
it is
on
the
Adrian
beginning.
Mel-
It's like
Yeah.
the second chapter of
Yeah.
the book. So we start with Georgie, and then we go to cut to. That's how we get into the present, which was an interesting note on the mechanics. Like instead of going back and forth, they split out the timelines, which I thought was really effective, if not a little bit chaotic in this movie. I thought that was great. One of the things that we talked about, the horror versus the not being that horrific. I think they get away with that because of cleverness and humor,
Yes.
right? Every horrible sequence is managed by a gag or an incredibly cool transition that is super distracting. In the building the team one, right, we go to Stanley, and I think it's Stanley's transition where we go from horrible thing to we're underneath a puzzle.
Loved
and
that.
we go up
I
through
loved
the
the puzzle.
Like, that was so
Yes.
cool. There was another one, the transition, the call to Ben transition. That was the call to the thing. The Bill Hader vomiting, coming out onto the bridge, was a great transition. The opening transition into the gutter cuts, like it goes into the gutter and then these lights come out of it, and it turns out we're already in the carnival by the time you know where you are. I mean, I think that sort of cleverness after genuinely horrific things offsets the scary stuff, and it gives you a sense of it's a little bit perforated.
It gives you room to breathe.
That's some of that accessibility that I was talking about. He's very good at that stuff. The transitions was that's the reason I want to go back. What I don't think that the director is the best at is he can have a sequence and it's really kind of spooky and quiet and neat, and he doesn't have a governor. He'll go from that to 20.
Right.
Like the scene with Jessica Chastain and the old woman.
Yeah.
But when she finally runs out and is like insanely, this was in the first one too, there was so much unnecessary CGI. The practical stuff works really good. Like I don't remember I'm not going to want to go back and see the woman and then she has mouths on her throat. Like, I get it. Just because you can, you don't have to. What I will remember is in the first movie, Richie walking into that room with all of the clowns.
Yes. Yeah.
I wish he had more confidence in just being small, because almost
That's
every
the
sequence
scariest stuff.
at some point goes too insane. Like Paul Bunyan gets too insane. Everything gets too
I agree.
much.
I mean, my favorite I thought it was handled really well at first was the three doors. And it's like, oh, he's messing with us. Let's go to the one that's not scary. Oh crap, that's scary. Okay, let's go. Okay, he's not messing with us. Let's go this one. And it's the Pomeranian, which was a great gag. But then it turns it It, again, like Tommy says, it goes to 20. Right. It goes way above and beyond what it needed to do, because it was
just let it be a gag.
Yeah. Well,
it was great.
You can push it into the scary. It just didn't need to be a 7-foot tall CG swirling horror thing. There's other ways to be smart about how to take the small dog and make it terrifying without just.
There are scenes.
Did you notice that the callback to those three doors is we saw the other half of that missing girl?
The legs.
We all figured that out. Okay. Because in the first one, she was the top half of her was hanging. And in the last time you saw her, I thought that was
There are places where the humor seems wrong to me, though, too. Can you guys explain to me the Angel in the Morning? What
Angel
was that?
In the Morning?
We got 8 seconds of that song, and then it's just.
It weirdly.
Did you laugh? Did anyone laugh?
Worked for me.
Okay,
I did, and there was tons of times when I was like, "Why would you put this gag there? You completely suck the air out of things." Tons, and even Hader is thrown some of those. For me, because so much of his identity is about avoiding grossness, that he actually had to give him a moment of pure, he's winning. He's fighting the grossness. They bring it up later about the choking. He's really winning. And then that's the horrible gift, is to be completely slimed. I wish it had actually been a little bit grosser to authorize the Angel
the song
in the Morning.
Ruined it. I mean, the song made it. It's the campy.
I know. Well, it made it funny.
I guess.
Yeah.
The Pomeranian, I laughed.
I get
it. The song, I was like, oh, okay.
That harkens to me. It calls back just to sliming in general. Like a really effective slime scene was in It 1, and it was super practical when the sink blows up and she's covered in blood, and it gives us a wonderful experience of watching the losers get back together and help her and demonstrate their isolation and their loneliness because nobody else can see it. I mean, all of that stuff I think worked really, really well. And I didn't get as much of that here. And I found that frustrating because I felt like there was more opportunity here because they had the richness of the adult cast that I think was working so well. I loved their dinner. I loved their introductory dinner so much. And I even think that nonsense like fortune cookie gag was, it was, but it was one where the humor worked so well because, again, nobody else could see it as they go crazy and destroy a restaurant. That moment, that beat was super restrained. And I think that actually worked very, very well for me.
It was one real quick other thing is I started to get a little nervous when it was clear that they were going to separate everyone and everyone had to go on these individual journeys. While I like the idea of that, something that I think is forgotten so much in horror is the power of panic in groups. That it's always the MO is to send one person down a hallway. Everyone's ready for that. Like to have a bunch of people go. So then when they teamed up, and even when by two and stuff, like in the Pennywise cave and stuff, it was such a relief of like, to get back
the problem
to that
with
stuff.
This story, why you can't do that is because that was one of the Book of the Vampire things of the first movie. That he needed to separate them to scare them. Like, I agree with you. I think that's a powerful thing in horror to do. Unfortunately, with this story, isolation is kind of the key metric for their fear.
And that's why I was okay with it.
Yeah.
It ended up working. Like I actually could have used during some of those, or maybe it just would have been repetitive, when everyone went on this very episodic journey. Everyone goes on their walk for their totem. And after a while, you're like, oh, right. Like another character. I loved how when they go back to the house on Neibold Street, they start intercutting between them. I kind of maybe would have liked that to cut down on the episodic nature in those first ones, or maybe then that would have made the Neibold Street stuff seem repetitive. I'm not sure. It's very ambitious, a lot to cover.
Yeah, there's a lot of meanwhile back at the ranch going on in this.
Yeah.
It becomes tiresome. Why then? Like I just feel like it devolves when it becomes giant Pennywise in the middle of a cavern and all the little people running from side to side. I found that just exhausting and predictable.
I don't care about that at all.
I was done.
I mean, that's the thing. Like that.
Well, there's a difference, JJ. Do you not care about it or not care for it?
I equally.
Okay.
Because it's not, that's the point where I'm like, I don't get the joy of this moment because it doesn't have any story weight to it at all. It's not a jump scare at that point either. It's kind of like a big WTF moment. Like that's all it is. And in capital letters.
Yeah, I agree with you on that because they do the ritual. The dead lights come down into the container. Mike tries to put the lid on. It turns into the giant balloon. And I thought, okay, the plan has failed. So things are going to get crazy from here. How are they going to handle this? And then when it's giant Pennywise chasing them around, I thought, okay, what's their plan? They can run from him for how long? Clearly, they need a plan to do this. And what I got was, well, we had this in the beginning. We're throwing some echoes back to them as kids, where it's Pennywise the spider chasing them around, and it is from the book that is sort of the manifestation of Pennywise is this spidery thing. So that's drawn in there. But yeah, I didn't need that. It was. They needed some purpose there, and it was, well, we need a chase scene here. And I agree with you guys. It didn't work for me. I didn't receive joy from that part at all. I just thought, I really hope they can redeem this ending a little bit better than just, running around and throwing rocks at him.
I think maybe one of the reasons that I gave it a little bit more of a pass, because Pete, in the very beginning, you brought up it's the epitome of running around fake things, throwing fake things and things. Tom answered this. One of the reasons that what I was okay with it is that is how the book, he is a spider in his form. And in the original TV series, we didn't have any of this technology. If you remember how it was done, it was all a shadow effect on a cave wall, where you see a poorly animated spider and a bunch of people being like, "Rawr!" because they were trying to honor the book. This at least looked pretty good to me, and still while having to honor the book. I thought it was kind of, at that point, I was just so along for the ride and was worried about Eddie. I mean, the characterization and stuff was the ending with the friendship stuff. Literally.
Wait, that was the third ending, second ending.
Third ending. When it gets Stand By Me, where he's ending, if anyone, do you ever have friends like you do in the whatever grade? Jesus, does anyone? Like, they're literally ending it the same way as Stand By Me. And I was like, I have old friends too.
So wait, are you talking about the time in the lake?
But see, you know what? Like, it's funny. I hear where you're going with that. And anytime the friends are like talking with each other and feels, I'm into that. Yeah. I'm into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was I
was riding the dragon the whole time.
Yeah, hearing Stan. And then when they started switching the voices between the adults and the kids, and it's not matching because they're all each other. So manipulative, so easy, so Breakfast Club. And I was like, I'm a loser too. Because it is such
in the night.
Yeah, it is such a weird ending of like, we're all losers. We're the worst. And we're always going to be pieces of ass. And then you're like, it's so weird. But it was super effective because I cared about these people.
That's very true.
Cared about the kids, cared about the adults. Yeah.
$38 million on one day. That's pretty good, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's off to a heck of a start.
I think it's, there's no competition now, really. Is there anything else that it's up against in the theaters right now?
Angel
I know
has
that
fallen.
because I've been watching this.
Watching how it does against Gerard Butler. Is that what we're looking at?
Maybe, because I'm just fascinated by that
horror thing.
That the blank has fallen seems like the JAG or the NCIS of movies.
Yes.
Like, I know no one that sees them, and yet it always goes great. So it's either everyone's parents, or it's a movie that somehow people leave on so their cat doesn't get lonely. When they leave their house, but it's in a theater.
Well done, Tommy. I was ready to just steamroll over you, but the cat thing, that was good. That was well timed.
Angel has fallen in second place, and it made less than $2 million on Friday. So it is crushing.
Yeah.
The other one that is getting, I mean, in terms of direct competition, I don't know that if my choice is, gosh, should I see it? The other movie is Angel Has Fallen or Spider-Man Far From Home Extended Cut, but I might see Ready or Not, which is getting some great reviews, right?
I loved Ready or Not,
Tommy.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
It's a taut hour and a half.
Yeah.
Like if that's your choice.
Well, it's so short. Did you see it with the short movie before it, Steve? Wait, did anyone see it?
I saw it. There was no short movie before it.
Oh, here it's playing with a short.
Oh.
Like a little horror short before it, I think, because it's so short. But Ready or Not is dynamite. Okay.
That's good to hear.
Speaking of little shorts, did you guys have the weird... You thought you were getting it, and you ended up getting a different movie there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Harley Quinn?
Exactly. Okay.
That's another movie that has the stupid title in the script. What are we, some kind of Suicide Squad? Oh, God. Anyway, yes, there's the Harley Quinn. I'm so sick of clowns.
This is the second time that studio has done it. The first one is with that new movie by whoever directed Interstellar.
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, his new movie. It's something like Tenet.
Yes.
They're doing you can't find it on the internet. It's only showing up in theaters as these little weird fake outs. They're kind of making it's kind of like The Walking Dead in theaters. Like they're Talking Dead, I mean. They're giving a reason to see it
I like that.
live
In the theater.
One other tidbit of trivia before we close up too. So we've been talking so much about It Chapter 1 taking over the spot as the highest grossing horror film of all time. If you haven't looked it up already, do you know what it unseated? I'll tell you the year, 1999.
Scream.
No. You wouldn't think of this movie as a horror film, but to think that this is the last one that was number one from 1999, that's a long time for a movie.
Yeah.
Original material.
Can you give us a clue? Or is this not fun to play a guessing game on a podcast?
Shyamalan.
Oh, Sixth Sense. The Sixth Sense. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting that it's the Sixth Sense in 99 that it's unseated? I thought that was really interesting. And I like that. I guess I like that there's that much resonance with a movie like that, with original material and all that stuff. And if this is what's doing it, I think maybe there's some warranting to this movie, especially these two movies, It 1 and 2, having this kind of significance to push it over the edge on it. 2017 to 1999. That's what, 28 years. That's a pretty good run for Sixth Sense.
That's 18 years.
So math and I aren't friends. Horror and I aren't friends. You know, we're trying to work all these things out.
I like how I was just like, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Sure. That's a number.
You're saying numbers. I'm all in.
So it's 18 years. That's still not a short amount of time.
Nothing to sneeze at. That's
exactly. Did you guys have anything else in closing that you'd like to talk about with this one?
Yes. One really last quick thing. One of my favorite things in horror cinema and in all cinema, but really horror, it's making a real comeback, is the idea of using memory, using flashbacks, of having like the kid actor run by the adult actor in the same phrase. The director, Mike Flanagan, who's one of my favorite horror directors right now. He's the guy behind Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. And he does it on, he did it in Oculus. He is the master of doing that. Like that's his big trick. And I feel like Andy Spaghetti really like copied to a T his way of doing it. It's just, it gives me a thrill. We talked about our love, Pete, about the practical stuff more than the crazy CGI. That is such a low rent, easy thing to do. And it just, my favorite thing in the entire world.
I think, did they do it with Stanley or did they do it with Eddie, the face onto face to transition?
Well, the face onto face was with Eddie because that is
so good.
That was like, I thought it was the kid with makeup on.
Right.
Like he looks, they are just key. They are just so
great.
Perfect. Yeah.
So with that, maybe it's time that we should rank it.
I really liked this movie and I couldn't come up with a theme because I got too obsessed with It Takes Two. Like it takes two to make a clown give a fright, but that's stupid. And then I got obsessed with It Too Brute, and that doesn't make any sense. And I couldn't get past those for a song. And so I literally have nothing. Flick chart! My apologies. But I do like this movie. I just couldn't. It was like an earworm I gave myself.
I'm putting that whole thing on the CD.
We've got all the movies that we've talked about on this show ranked over at flickchart.com/TNR Filmboard. Flickchart is a really cool site where you can create a tournament-style stack ranking of your movie preferences. So go check it out and find out how your film favorites fare against ours. Who has got the keys to the castle today?
I'm in it. And, you know, it's funny. I've got not that this is predictive or anything, but, you know, Flickchart has this little stats before you rank it. You can see how the film is doing in the global ranking of Flickchart users. And right now it's ranked 72,663rd. It wins 37% of its matchups. Only 77 total users have ranked it.
Oh, wow.
So it's only been ranked 77 times. And 0 people have it at number 1. 0 people have it in their top 20.
Oh.
So just you know,
throw our hat in the ring.
I'm going to let us add it to the flick chart and go to the grid.
Yeah.
First up, It Chapter 2 or Hail Caesar.
It chapter 2.
2.
That's 2 for It Chapter 2.
That's correct.
Yeah, I will say It Chapter 2.
All right. It Chapter 2.
Came up on my
The
flip
top
chart
half.
too.
How about It Chapter 2 or Captain America Civil War?
Civil War for me.
Civil War for me.
Is that the airport one?
Yeah.
Yes.
To be on, yeah, Civil War. It's because I want to see. I've seen Civil War too many times. That one sequence that I love, the airport scenes, and I want to see
Yeah.
it too
Yeah.
again. So, like, I want to vote for it, but I don't think that that's right.
I hear you.
Steve was
How about-
nodding. his
Yeah,
head.
I will. Marvel is tough.
Tough.
Yeah, it's its own thing and it has its own pleasure, but there's a complexity to the characters in this. Yeah.
All right. How about It Chapter 2 or Solo, Star Wars story?
It Chapter 2.
It's Chapter 2.
It Chapter 2.
Oh,
Take that.
yeah.
All right.
Solo
about-
aged poorly with.
It Chapter 2 or Captain Marvel?
Oh,
It Chapter 2 for me.
It Chapter 2 for me.
The Marvel's like popcorn, it doesn't have the substance. It's but it's so dang fun.
I will tell you a lot of this positivity about me ranking
Yeah.
here like this is because of the conversation. we
No,
just had.
I think
Because I can't do horror on my own. I would have walked
No.
away with that being negative. Like on my flick chart, it doesn't show up well at all because I did it before we did this.
Yeah.
I'm feeling better about it after talking about this.
yeah, I'll go at Chapter 2.
How about It Chapter 2 or The Man from UNCLE?
It Chapter 2, because as much as I enjoyed it, I can't keep The Man from U.N.C.L.E. in my head.
Uncle
I remember
for me-
walking out and I was like, I loved it. I can't remember a single part. They were in a boat at one point.
They were. And
I want Uncle.
All right.
I remember, I've seen it again, and I remember our initial conversation. We had some issues with the end. There were some mechanics going on at the end that with double crossing.
Bill write it?
Yeah. So I don't know, but I do love Uncle, so I'm going to go with Uncle.
Wait, so it's 2-1.
So it's
2-1. Pete,
and I'm at Chapter 2, so we
Okay.
have a tie.
Oh boy.
Pete and Steve do Rochambeau, please.
All right,
I'll give it to you.
Steve.
I'll give it to.
He said
I'll
he'll give it to you.
because it's yeah. No, if we're split, I wasn't that firm on Uncle. It is a lot of fun and I enjoy it.
This is how we beat fear on this show. We compromise. It's a smart thing.
Yeah, no, I just
It
won.
was a Rosham. Don't.
I'll compromise.
We compromise.
I'm happy with either way on that one. Yeah.
Great. It wins.
I'm going to
It
tell
was.
you this one. The next mashup here is really hard
Oh.
for me. Actually, maybe it's pretty easy. I don't know. It Chapter 2 or Split.
Oh. Split from.
Both are have so many problems and so many great parts.
Split for me.
From the cheap seats. Split takes it.
I'll give it to you, like as if it's a thing that I can do.
This is interesting. You guys, this puts Split. No, It at number 24 on our
Wow.
flick chart.
Out of 80
Right
something?
after Molly's game.
Oh, see, Jessica, there you are.
At least Jessica
Oh.
stays intact. So that's 24. That's a 71%, 3.5 stars. If we were to judge by the algorithm for
Again, and
Letterboxd.com.
like I said, this has moved up for me. I actually am going to say it's 3 stars. And because now I have a sense of what the story means, because I didn't from the movie, I was too scared. It's a like for me. So I started out this podcast saying it wasn't, but
Very exciting.
it's 3 and a like for me. And I think Jessica Chastain might be my favorite actress in Hollywood.
What?
Yes.
Oh.
Meryl.
Just-
I assume Meryl straight listens.
I know. She loves it.
Sorry, Tara Reid. Okay. It's out of 4. If it's out of 4, it's 3
It's
and a
out of
like
5.
for me.
Out of 5.
It's out of 5?
out of 5.
Four
And half.
4 and a like for me.
I will go
Okay.
with 3.5 and a like.
3, 4, 3.5. All likes.
I think I'm 3.5.
Perfect. 3.5 and a like. We all get. I assume you're a like too, Pete. Didn't mean to jump.
Yes.
in.
I'm gonna heart that.
That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Where do we go from here? We had a great listener suggestion in our green room talk before this show to check out in October a Bong Joon-ho movie coming out, Parasite. So that is our plan for October.
Remind the audience who Bong Joon-ho is.
Bong Joon-ho.
No, why don't you, Tommy?
Well, he loves the cinema. He's a big flick man. Sorry, I don't know his
Pete
name.
and Andy did Snowpiercer on
Yes.
him. You guys did an entire Bong
We
Joon-ho
did a whole
series.
Bong Joon-ho series.
Yes,
yeah.
and did the host. I mean, he's great. I'm excited for it. It may be a little scary again, but I've been happy with his movie, so I'm excited to do that one. It is in limited release, so we're not sure yet. We have to make sure it's showing in Portland and Phoenix, or else Tommy's going to do a film board all by himself in LA. But
everything shows in my backyard.
But that's coming out the weekend of October 11th. So that's what we're looking to do for the film board in October. Pete, are you guys still talking about Robin Hood there on the main show?
It's been so long.
All right, now.
What comes after
Easy.
it? Just maybe.
Easy, everybody.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. Robin Hood it's an exhaustive survey of the Robin Hoods.
Yes.
But important.
Good. It's clever.
So we did, let's see, as this goes live, we are talking about, unbelievably, we have 3 more Robin Hood movies.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize.
At this point, we have Robin Hood 91, the John Irving film. We just talked about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves last week.
Yep.
Which, yes. And then we have Robin Hood Men in Tights, and then we have Robin Hood 2010, the Ridley Scott version, and we are doing the director's cut of that film. So we have 3 more Robin Hood. But after that, look, it's all Cronenberg all the time. So get ready. We start with Shivers, we end with Dead Ringers, and we've got a full 7 Cronenberg films. Yes, we're doing Rabid. Yes, we're doing Scanners. Yes, we're doing Videodrome.
Nightbreed?
Every single one of them.
Are you going to do ones where he just starred in, like Nightbreed?
We are not doing that. I'll tell you, Shivers, Rabid, Fast Company, The Brood, Scanners, Videodrome, Dead Ringers, and The Jerk. No, that's Steve Martin. Yes, we're doing a whole Steve Martin series, too.
Well, that's great, and that's exciting going forward. I know there's been some Robin Hood angst, but I've been happy with the shows. There's been a couple that I've been listening to and being happy with learning all about. The Prince of Thieves episode is especially fun to listen to because I feel like a lot of people know that movie. That's from kind of the sweet spot of our film grow-up culture, I feel like. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to listen to in those shows. And
you want a real downer, hit Robin and Marion, and then just watch the last 10 minutes, because, I mean, yeah.
I didn't talk about it in the show open, but we just did talk about it in our green room session. We do that before every film board talk here. We meet with people in our Discord server, and we chat about the movie that we're doing this month and just all the different stuff going on there. If you don't know about our Discord server, you should go and check out thenextreel.com. Let us know that you want to see more of us on that server, where we gather with all of our fun film friends. We discuss lots of things and stuff and nonsense from around and inside the entertainment globe. The deadlights of the entertainment world. There's also specific chats about our shows and lots of spoilerific fun to be had by all. So come and join us on Discord, because that's where we'll keep the conversation going. For this one, say goodnight. Pete Wright.
You'll float too. You'll float too.
See you later, Tommy Hansen.
You lied and I died.
One more word from Steve Sarmento.
This meeting of the Losers Club has officially ended. Hondo, everyone.
Yay!
At the next reel, when the movie ends, our conversation begins. Till next.